So we have an amazing panel for you guys as this first talk here. It's moderated by Frank Holmes. Frank Holmes is a renowned global investor. He leads the HIVE board of directors and is contributing to the company's vision and strategy. Frank is the chief executive and chief investment officer at US Global Investors, a leading mutual fund and asset management firm. Frank is a sought-after keynote speaker at international investment conferences and a regular guest in business media. His Frank Talk CEO blog is one of the most widely read in finance. Chairman of HIVE Technologies, and he's CIO at US Global again. So we also have David Namdar. David is a founding partner and chief strategy officer for Galaxy Digital. He has a decade of international business and financial market experience and has been involved with a wide range of business from startups to large corporations. He has investment experience in private and public equities, derivatives and foreign currencies, and in using fundamental and quantitative analysis to invest on a global basis. In addition, he has significant expertise in digital currency investments, blockchain technology, and the emerging decentralized economy. He's a founder of SolidX Partners, a startup aimed at institutionalizing digital assets as an alternative asset class. He previously was with Millennium Management and served as the head trader and technology analyst for an equity relative value portfolio team. David has a bachelor's degree in finance and international business from the USC Marshall School of Business and also holds the CFA designation. Vic Pathak is co-founder of Gear Blockchain Inc., a blockchain company with a primary focus in promoting green energy and renewable investments. Prior to Gear, Vic's experience extends across financial services, banking, and natural resources, having worked across multiple divisions at American Express in Europe, serving as Director of Business Development at the Canadian Resource Merchant Banking Group, Forbes in Manhattan, and acting as Investor Relations at Gemstone Mining Company. Fura Gems Inc., that was the mining company. And Mr. Pathak holds a first-class honors degree from King's College London. We also have Jenna Pilgrim. Jenna is the Director of Business Development at the multi-million-dollar Blockchain Research Institute, which is conducting the definitive investigation of blockchain strategies, opportunities, and implementation challenges, and is funded by companies and governments worldwide. The BRI was founded in March of 2017 by Don Tapscott and Alex Tapscott, co-authors of Blockchain Revolution, How the Technology Behind Bitcoin is Changing Money, Business, and the World. Jenna was brought on by the Tapscott Group in 2015 to be the Hype Master. That's very cool that your title is the Hype Master, Jenna. The Hype Master for Blockchain Revolution, which has now become a bestseller in Canada and has been translated into 12 languages. Jenna holds a BBA in finance from Trent University, is a certified Bitcoin professional. Jenna co-founded her first company when she was just 18. Active in her community, Jenna sits on the board of the Peterborough Rowing Club and is a steward at CAMH Engage. And then finally, we originally had Roy Seabag from Goldmoney. Sitting in for him is Josh Crumb. Josh Crumb is the co-founder of Goldmoney and was formerly in the Metals and Mining Group at Goldman Sachs. Frank, let's take it away.
Hello, hello, hello. Okay, good. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm happy the real enthusiasts in this whole emergent industry are here. This is an incredible panel for many reasons. We launched HIVE and Galaxy's launched, did $250 million, and other companies here are already public, are funding and growing, and Josh will tell you the story of how they're growing. So I would think that, you know, if you look at this panel here, you have people that have actually raised the capital and have created business models that are positive cash flow. So I'm very excited about having the group, in addition to your intellectual capital you're going to share with us. So let's start off with, I'm going to go through the panel and give them 3 minutes each to sort of about them, that's more personal and human and what they're doing, and then we're going to talk about some of the tokenizing of everything. So Vic, you want to start it off?
Yeah, sure. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Vic Pathak. I'm the co-founder and vice president of a company called Gear Blockchain Inc. We're a Barbados-based company with offices in Los Angeles and in Toronto. Essentially what we're looking to do is we intend to become the world's first closed-loop platform for green energy and renewables. We have an upcoming ICO of over $100 million, which we intend to then invest into a green energy mining platform. So essentially using green energy to clean out the proof of work system that is so essential to mining cryptocurrencies. Then building upon that, we intend to then use the mining cryptocurrency to then help to offset the capex in green energy, so across the board, solar, wind, tidal, and biomass. In terms of gear itself, we have a very prominent advisory board consisting of names like Larry King, the legendary CNN host, Jim Rogers, well-known investor, known to have broken the Bank of England back in the 90s and created Black Wednesday when he shorted the pound when the UK left the European exchange mechanism. And then on top of that, we also have Stan Barty, who is the co-founder and chairman of Forbes in Manhattan, the Canadian merchant banking resource group. In addition to gear, we're also looking to tap into one of our industry peers, Rootmaster Capital, who is a public listed company in Toronto with holdings in natural resources and also in technology, and hopefully help them to then tokenize natural resources across the spectrum again of gold, lithium, more exotic minerals as well, including gemstones such as emeralds and rubies, to see how else we can then drive the space forward in the case of not just green energy and renewables, but then also helping to provide a token that's backed by tangible resources that provides credibility and assurance to the token holders that use that token. Going back to gear, what we expect to do is we hope to liaise with a number of companies and research institutions, including the University of Oxford, to help drive research in the space of green energy and renewables, and also help to drive environmental sustainability awareness and further innovation in green energy and renewables. We also then intend to become the token of choice, essentially becoming a substitute for the renewable energy certificate with companies such as SolarCity and Tesla, where token holders can hopefully then redeem the gear token in exchange for products and services that help to encourage further investment into green energy and renewables in receipt for discounts. So that's kind of a quick 101 of myself and gear and some of the projects that we're looking to drive going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure. So I feel very fortunate. I got my start in crypto and Bitcoin by attending Bitcoin NYC meetups and getting together with a number of kind of the early Bitcoin community in New York as part of Satoshi Square, where we'd be trading Bitcoin on our phones in Union Square, and going to conferences which looked a lot like this with in attendance. And I set up a company in 2014 called SolidX, and the idea there was
80% of the people are recuperating.
Yeah. The idea there was to be this niche and focused investment bank focused on Bitcoin and other digital assets. We were among the first people to be talking about other digital assets, and I think as I've seen the space evolve over the last couple of years, a lot of the things and the ideas that people had back then are starting to take hold now, and we're seeing a second wave of innovation, and I think we're going to go through that now and going forward. And so I partnered up with Mike Novogratz last year, started setting in motion the company that we founded, Galaxy Digital, with the idea to be this investment bank, merchant bank focused on digital assets, kind of a diversified financial services and asset management firm covering everything in the space.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Hi, as they said in my bio, I started working for the Tapscots in late 2015 on the operations around Blockchain Revolution. Blockchain Revolution was a really good book, but it created more questions than answers. So the time came to create the definitive investigation of blockchain strategy. So we realized that there was a knowledge gap between the innovation branches in different companies and the rest of the company. So how do you then lead a transformation in a company when you have a whole bunch of educated people over here working on blockchain pilots and POCs, and they're very educated on their blockchain practice, but then they are spending a lot of their time educating the rest of their company about the implications of blockchain, or what is a blockchain, or can I build a purple blockchain, or questions that they shouldn't have to spend time answering. So we launched the definitive investigation of blockchain strategy. We're doing 75 projects on probably any industry that you can think of. We started with financial services because that was obviously the biggest vertical for us. But beyond that, we're looking into blockchain for government services, for healthcare, for media, for telecom, for energy, for resource extraction, for the list goes on and on and on. And in all of these cases, we partner with who we believe to be the global leader in that specific subject that we're studying, and then we provide them all of the resources and all of the network to be able to provide the most insightful body of work. And then technology research is great, but if you don't read technology research, then it's not useful to you. So the majority of my job and the majority of my day is spent on helping our member companies to disseminate the research within their own company. So we're funded by large companies and governments, and they pay to be privy to the research that we do. That said, 6 months after our research is published and that it then published to our members, it then becomes public domain. So our first projects will be going public in May of this year, so you can look for that. But a lot of our custom work is centered on helping people to disseminate the research within their own company and figuring out how to triage it. So if we're partnered with someone in innovation, how do we make sure that the chief legal officer reads our legal paper? How do we make sure that the chief human resources officer reads our paper on human resources and credentialing, and how do we then disseminate this research so that someone can have a nonpartisan view on a specific subject? Because there are a lot of amazing blockchain companies out there, but every single blockchain company that you hear a pitch from, if they start with what is a blockchain, they're probably going to say it in a way that paints their project in a really good light, which definitely isn't a wrong thing, but there was a need in the market for nonpartisan research from someone who wasn't trying to sell you something. So that's what we do.
And Josh and I were just at the BMO event, and it's interesting because in the last minute they put together a crypto group, and BMO Global Resource Mining Conference occupies 2,500 rooms. It's the largest resource conference in the world, put on by the Bank of Montreal, and so it's 27th year. And we put together a crypto event for a lunch, and usually this lunch gets about 50 people coming in the room, and it swelled to 300 people attending. And the interesting part was most of them, I think there was 5 millennials. And so with that, Josh and I have been on this road tour speaking and educating people on this journey that we were going through in blockchain cryptocurrency. So Josh has got tremendous experience, and as I've said, been on so many panels with you. So tell the story.
Yeah, sure. I'll give the abridged version. So Roy Sabag and myself, Roy's CEO, co-founded a company called BIC Gold in 2014. We both came from financial services. We were very disappointed in financial services. I was the head of global metal strategy at Goldman, so I was on the sell side, and Roy was a very successful long-short hedge fund manager on the buy side. But we were young guys that had done well, been very fortunate, it was crazy to us by 2013, 2014, that the financial system had already forgotten about things like counterparty risk and over-leveraging their clients' assets and all of these things that obviously just about broke the world just a few years before. And so when we saw Bitcoin, I think we were very, very excited. We had no idea what it was going to be, but what we knew was this was something. It was a bearer asset. It was a commodity money. That brought control back to the asset owner, and so we wanted to be a part of it. But what we did know was gold. We knew gold also had those properties of being a bearer asset. It's nobody else's liability. A dollar bill is somebody else's liability. A security held, in the float of a financial system is someone else's liability. All double entry. And so we just wanted to play that interoperability between physical assets and digital assets. We then acquired a company called Goldmoney, which was founded by James Turk, and he had basically predicted and talked about all of this stuff and digital currencies back in 2001. And so James Turk and a lot of prominent crypto community members now were all part of the original Goldmoney, decades ago. And then the final business I want to.
So why don't you explain to them what Goldmoney, what you can do with that credit card?
Yeah, so we've got vaults all around the world. We have about $2 billion in client assets: gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and now Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then 9 different currencies, all that you can actually spend and access on a MasterCard as well. It's really about providing a service where it looks and feels like a bank account, except all assets are owned by the clients. We just manage the sort of the technology in the middle, but it's actually the client's assets. And what's, I think, most important probably for most of this room is we launched a business called Block Vault, which is a subsidiary of Goldmoney. And we are launching the first fully insured, fully audited, full transparency crypto custodian. And I'll probably talk more about it on the panel, but we think custody and identity are probably the two pieces that change the financial system. And so we've been very focused on the custody piece.
I'm very fortunate because I like to bet on young jockeys, and when he was creating his vehicle, Josh didn't tell you, he used to work with Lucas Lundin, who's one of those great mining entrepreneurs of the world. And when he was going to create a shell, from Nash Juba called me, and immediately I wrote a check to bet on him. And in this game, that's a lot of times we're betting on a technology, the tokenizing of things, but you really have to be selective in betting on people because they make themselves relevant. They reinvent themselves faster than the average person. And what Josh has done with Roy is phenomenal for me. And the other part is that both of them, and along with David, have tremendous capital market experience. And that's what's really important if you want to go the concept for me, and you're going to tokenize something, you have to have this capital, because then you're going to respect regulations. And it's like in the NBA, if you don't respect the referee and you mouth off, you're thrown out of the game, your team loses. So you have to develop this concept of knowing the rules and knowing how to be creative at the same time showing that respect. And that's what they have in that DNA of being able to pivot quickly. Plus, Josh is a good hoopster. But I think in going back and talking about the tokens, I'm going to go this way, Josh. Comment on this sort of concept we talked about, stamps, Canadian Tire money, that whole thesis on these are the tokens that have been existing and how we have to educate the regulators and a lot of my peer on this has become digital. Why don't you explain that concept?
Yeah, again, it's this concept of commodity money where the asset you own is no one else's liability and it has a level of scarcity that it can't be rehypothecated over and over and over in the financial system. So that the owner actually controls their custody. Even if it's used at a third party like us, if there's a third party vault with third party auditing insurance, and obviously the blockchain itself for Bitcoin is a third party auditing. But again, it's very different than assets that have to be created within a multilateral system. So you look at, I think there was a tweet that got a lot of retweets just the other day about how, the post office did a big utility token. It's called a stamp. And it's the same idea. It's a commodity asset. And again, I think we can move on the tokenization of all things. Look, a contract is still going to be a contract. A security is still going to be a security that needs to actually be tied to sovereign law. It's very different than a Bitcoin being sort of in the realm of Bitcoin blockchain law. These are very different things. But if you're going to interact with the real world, you're still going to be interacting with governments that have guns and can put you in jail. That's the nature of interacting with the real world. But what blockchain can do, again, if you have custody that gets away from big centralized custody, and you have the ability to take it in and out of the system with ease, what that will do is that will give the power back to the individual, because then now the bank has to actually pay you for custody. What banks have done is they've totally hijacked the financial system because they were the person that's verifying identity and custody. They then took all those assets as float and started making money on your assets. And that's what blockchain and securitizing all things is going to be able to do, is it will give you power to take it right back out, which makes them have to pay you for that float. Banks don't pay you for that float anymore. And that's what I think is going to radically change capital formation.
So how much money have you raised, David? Why don't you walk through that journey in the past quarter?
Well, I'll probably defer it and not get into that too much, but just in terms of ICO investing and kind of what I've been seeing.
Galaxy, how much money has Galaxy raised?
We had raised $250 million.
$250 million. So that's a real cutting edge, and what's important for everyone here to recognize is that Canada has become the place to raise capital for a host of reasons that was basically controlled privately by Silicon Valley. If you take a look at some of these companies, there's 15 people that control a funding mechanism as $50 million minimums. So therefore, most of the people in the world are cut out of playing in that arena. And what's happening now in Canada is that the capital markets are accepting anything that's blockchain, and you're able to raise money. So you've raised $250 million. You're also associated with HIVE, and it's raised how much?
Over 100.
Over $100 million. So there's $350 million that's been raised. And so that's why when the people in this room to recognize that these are the real thought leaders, but aren't just writing about it, they're actually doing it and raising capital. I know, Josh, you've been raising capital for various ventures also.
But I think we should talk about the tokenization of how this capital gets deployed. And
No, I realize, but the fact is that there is capital there. And you've been able to tap into the capital. Why? Because I'll come back to the thesis on tokens. And so what do you think is the biggest opportunity, and I'll go with Vic, for this token? What is the number one commodity? Is it going to be diamonds, or is it going to be, in Colombia, it's going to be emeralds? What do you think is the hottest thing you can tokenize like Lucera did with diamonds?
Sure. I think ultimately it comes down to going back to the Bretton Woods system, but on steroids. Now, if we look at what happened during the Bretton Woods system, we were able to give people that hold US dollar or the pound sterling assurance that this piece of paper is backed by something that's tangible, it has value, but ultimately it converts into something that's liquid, but still has that storage of value aspect to it. Now, what tokenization is allowing us to back a liquid asset by something that's far, far more diversified than purely just gold or purely just the word of the government. If we can take like a diversified basket of resources, that should give far, far more credibility and assurance to token holders that this liquid token has a value that is stable, which is currently what we're not seeing in the space. There's a lot of pricing volatility. There's a great joke where a boy asks for his father, he says, hey, can I have a Bitcoin for my birthday? And the father says, $10,000, why do you want $11,500? $8,500 is a lot of money. And that's exactly what's happening in the space, is that you can go and pay for a coffee in the morning, and by the evening, that same Bitcoin could have probably bought you the coffee shop. So we need to then provide that stability in the market of something that's stably priced, and I believe that the way in doing that is providing a diversified basket of goods that will help mitigate that pricing volatility. But ultimately, it comes down to the tokens themselves and the networks themselves being able to manage that pricing volatility. What we're doing at Gear is we have a mechanism built into the token itself which helps to mitigate some of that speculation by imposing buy pressure when people look to liquidate tokens, or selling tokens into the market when people look to buy and take the token price above the NAV of the network itself. And that gives token holders that assurance that this token is going to be representative of the underlying value of the network. And similar to the work that Josh and Roy are doing over at BIC Gold, I really feel that the movement, it has to move towards something that's tangible, it has to move to something, a movement that's diversified, but ultimately it has to move towards a system that gives token holders the assurance that this token is going to be worth what it is in the morning and the same as what it is in the evening, which is what we're not seeing in the space right now.
And David, what are you going to tokenize?
Well, so I think that's kind of one of the important themes of the conference, right? As we're moving towards security tokens, what I think has been missing, and as I've seen the whole evolution from ICOs, TGEs, from the very early ones, I think we're, as a whole in the space, we're very good at thinking high level and generalizations. And one of the things that stood out to me years ago, David Johnson, who spoke the other day, is a close friend, and he put out a couple years ago Johnston's Law, which was anything that can be decentralized will be decentralized. And now we're talking about the tokenization of all things. I think it's important for us to remember that, right, we're still dealing with, whether it's securities, whether it's other types of like programs and things that have had value already. Now, what we're seeing is the digitization and tokenization of it, but it still goes back to things that have underlying value and things that we're measuring. And so when I think about that, right, we're seeing now countries, governments, large and small, large corporations coming out with ideas to tokenize certain things. And I think it's important to realize that there needs to be an underlying purpose, there needs to be an underlying value, whether it's a commodity, whether it's some inherent thing that's built into a system or a platform in order to have demand for those tokens. And so what we're missing right now is helping the story go to the next level of why tokens are better, right? Why security tokens are going to be what replaces existing securities today. Why utility tokens and other tokens and commodity-backed tokens are better than the way people own things and have owned things in the past.
And Jenna, what do you think is going to be the hottest thing that's down the path that you feel that is closest to you that could be tokenized?
I think there's a lot of applications for intangible assets, so things like attention or time or reputation, being able to sell things that you couldn't sell before. So the BAT tokens, the Brave project is a really good example of something like that, where they're selling attestation of someone's identity rather than the actual details. So they don't need to know that I'm all of the details about me. They just need to know that I meet the requirements. So I think a lot of these companies like Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google have made a lot of their money in selling people's data to people, selling people's data back to them. But I think there's a lot of implications in the next sort of phase of crypto down the road of being able to tokenize these intangible assets and being able to sell attestation rather than selling the actual information itself. Prove that, or sell the fact that the information is true, that it is recorded, and then it does meet the requirements.
Josh, what do you think? I know you're working on a token.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's important, and in fact, back in 2014 when we used the name BIC Gold, there was obviously a lot of people in the crypto community that weren't happy with that, and even getting in sort of a debate with Nick Szabo on Twitter. He actually had a one-line tweet to me, which I actually think about all the time, is what is the contract? And I think that's one of the most important things when you think about token. We keep saying token like we've invented a new way to create money out of thin air. It's a contract. What is the contract is what should always be in your mind. What I don't like about this tokenization, which I think is frankly just ridiculous, is that people are issuing ICOs thinking that they no longer have an obligation, that they're no longer, I'm just going to issue this as equity that has no contract. If it has no contract, it has no price, it has no value. So I think everyone's got to remember what is the contract, and so I think there's a lot of people. I think there's a lot of cool technology that are happening, but no one's asking enough. What is the contract? What are my obligations? And what are my obligations to stakeholders? But look, we've gone through all that. We went through that with equities. In the 1920s when equities started becoming a main asset class outside of debt. Yeah, I mean, we just always ask, what is the contract?
And what do you think is most eminent for you for a token? That something would be a new coin that could streamline trading, an asset class, natural gas?
Well, getting some back things that Jenna was saying is markets that are fundamentally not liquid now, where this technology, it's not going to create liquidity out of thin air, but it's going to create, price discovery. It's going to create an ability to make a marketplace that's not just inside the walls of a bank. So I totally agree. I think data, I think things like, being able to actually sort of bring your own machine learning algorithms to data and have the discovery of those, I think is going to be very interesting. I think one of the most important things that's happening in the world outside of blockchain is Asia's switch from coal to gas. And there's no contract for LNG. What is the contract? And I think that something like that is important. I think intellectual property. I think there's all sorts of interesting markets that this can unlock by creating liquidity and discoverability on contracts that are right now not liquid.
And what do you think, David? Oh, sorry. On that, is there something that you can see that could be tokenized?
Well, so right now, I mean, again, I think, and especially being here, the biggest focus is on how the security token landscape is going to play out. And I think it's both around new ways that the current equity is going to be captured and also new ways that things are going to be built into the contract, right? So as a number of the different security token platforms, Polymath included, are going out and coming up with different ways to that people can pass security tokens around and what inherently that's going to mean versus owning an equity, right? And how it's going to be better. That's kind of the most important thing I think to focus on.
And Vic, what do you think would make a token better than a security?
So I think at the moment we're kind of entering a new realm of economics. I think we've had macroeconomics, we've had microeconomics, and now we're moving into the nanoeconomics, where you're essentially creating a token that can tokenize yourself. So we're having this movement right now, which is building credibility of the cryptocurrency space, with the work that Josh is doing, the work that David is doing. But then we're kind of moving towards this new realm, which is the kind of stuff that Jenna's talking about, of being able to tokenize the value that you give out to the world. What I would like to see is the ability of people to be able to invest in things that's special to them. So look at celebrities, celebrities and musicians, artists. It's very difficult to be able to put a price on things like art, but people that have value of that art, they should be able to invest in that piece of art. They should be able to tokenize that piece of art and essentially invest in an artist that they believe in going forward. And there's another joke about the Kardashians. As much as we want to see the less of them, they might be a great kind of face for being able to celebritize this token aspect and say, well, you have these celebrities who want to be able to kind of tokenize their brands. I think that would be a very cool thing to work with. But I think at the moment it's a case of we need to focus on providing assurance and stability to the space, but we've got to be creative, we've got to be innovative. This entire space right now is a shift of thought. I want to be able to continue that momentum as well.
Jenna, what do you think is the biggest hurdle rate? Regulatory, rule of law, contract, as Josh talks about, having a real asset that's behind it. What do you see?
I think governments have a really golden opportunity in this space. I don't know a lot about the American market, but in Canada, the Canadian government is very interested in being able to leverage a digital identity platform to provide essentially a sovereign-backed digital identity that is cryptographically secure, that allows me to attest to the fact that I do live at this address, that I am this age, that I do all these things. But I think governments can really mess us up. We saw that this a couple days ago, where the SEC is launching a probe, and there's all kinds of and there's nothing to worry about there, but it could get worse. We have yet to discover a developed nation that is not a tax haven that has come up with a robust framework for how to regulate an ICO, and I think that's the next thing coming, is to how to regulate a new asset class that we haven't had before. So we're at the Research Institute, we're working with governments to help them understand the implications of the technology and how far down the road something like this could go, so that they don't make rash decisions that could then hinder innovation.
I think the big part for my experience is that we have to educate, and that's what Josh, you and I have been doing, and have the right narrative to educate the regulator and educate people that are so negative towards the Bitcoin and Ethereum, that whole phenomena. And my experience has been the hurdle has been basic things that they can relate to. So they can all relate to stamps. So what happens if a stamp is limited in numbers? It becomes valuable and it goes up in value, and we can trade stamps, and people move money across nations by using stamps. It's portable like gold, but it's lighter. And it's recognizing Canadian Tire has been having paper money out there of their own currency for a long time. And I can give it to you, or I can sell it to you, and you can buy it from me. What happens if that becomes digital? When I explain this narrative to my peers, then all of a sudden I get this aha moment going through. And the biggest thing in my experience was I was shocked at the number yesterday or 2 days ago of how much money went into ICOs, and I believe there's some old gold bugs like John Hathaway used to believe that it was hurting Bitcoin, was hurting gold, but it's hurting junior exploration companies, and it doesn't matter if it's mining, oil and gas, or technology, because it's speculative money, and something like over $4 billion went into these ICOs last year, and they've replaced IPOs. And I'll talk about this later today, but it's really, my experience is share with everyone, is really understand the narrative that's going to relate to me, that you can help me understand the tokenization of things, and then it'll be faster for the regulators and for the bankers to buy into it. I know you had to change the name from Bitcoin. I know that we had to say we had virgin coins at HIVE, because if we didn't say we had virgin coins, the banks weren't going to open an account.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very important point when dealing with regulators, and we've sort of broken ground and trailblazed a lot of interesting things with regulators globally, and it is getting back to that deep simplicity. You have to get it back to the first principles and explaining things like a stamp. And explaining things that this is actually not different. It's got a new set of jargon around it, it's got a new set of technology around it, but fundamentally the first principles are nothing new. And I think that's where we've had a lot of success, even Block Vault, actually getting a 125-year-old company like Brinks to be our multi-sig partner. They guard things physically with guns. They don't, there's obviously some very interesting digital security divisions within Brinks, but at the end of the day, when we were dealing with their vaulting people, this is nothing different. A private key is nothing different than the way you have two keys to get into your precious metal vault. So you have to sort of explain things again, because there is nothing new here.
Except for it's digital.
Yeah, except that it's digital. But I think it's the, and particularly with regulators, again, if you get back to what is the intent of your contract, if your intent is to have no obligations and just raise money, yeah, you're probably violating securities law because you're actually selling air. But if your intent is something good, always get back to the first principle and then explain it. They typically are not bad guys.
So to piggyback on that, I think there's a lot of implications for smart money. If we're talking about, a lot of clients ask me about commercialization of blockchain. How can I package it and then sell it to my customers? I think the first bank to come out with essentially a tokenized version of money that then allows you to put on stipulations as to how the money can be spent will be a really interesting product. So if CIBC, for example, were to put out a coin specifically for university students where parents could issue money to their children who are going off to university, and that money could only be spent on groceries and rent and not beer. So if you could provide some sort of service like that, I think that's a really good example of a productization of a token platform where you're able to then put in the stipulations that you want based on the retailers that you think should be able to receive those funds.
I see our time is up, and please make sure you go and talk to these people that have got tremendous experience. I was trying to highlight the fact that you've raised so much money is a testament that you understand the industry and what the challenges are. And I'll be speaking later today on my journey as a fund manager launching HIVE blockchain, the first crypto mining company in the world. And so hopefully I'll see some more stragglers in here. It's sort of grown a little bit more by I think noon. So thank you very much, and please reach out to the gang here, and also Roy. Where's Roy? He's straggled in here. Where's Roy? There he is. So you can go and grab Roy and grab Josh Crumb and Jenna and Vic and David and ask them and learn from them, because they've got lots of scar tissue and tremendous experience and drive. So thank you very much. Give them a warm applause.
Oh, and we also like to pick fights. So we like to argue the intellectual. I'm wearing, client made this shirt for me. Gold's not dead. That's specifically to pick fights with crypto people that believe that after 5,000 years, poof, gold has no value. So I'm happy to have that fight with anybody here.
And by the way, his partner, they tag team. So he and Roy will tag team you, so be careful. But thank you very much. Please, a warm applause for the group.